Hello. The following is a discussion about the major flooding in Nigeria in 2012. The flooding killed 363 people and displaced over 2 million. We will be discussing the importance of technology and other disaster management practices that need to be implemented in order to mitigate the effect of future flooding in the region.
When trying to assess what is the best approach to helping with current flood victims, we also need to assess how knowledgeable the Nigerians are about how to evacuate, where to live, and the safety precautions that need to be taken. Living close to water is something that is found to be common for fishing and drinking purposes in Nigeria. Because of the lack of government involvement in helping educate the local people of these heavily affected areas, we need to rely on many nonprofit organizations to come in and educate the citizens of these low-lying villages. There's a lot that needs to be taught to these people. Due to the lack of education, when it comes to building homes and sewer systems, people need to be educated on the needs to free drainages and sewages, as well as what are the signs of contaminated water and improper shelter. If the Nigerians are better well educated on the measures needed to be taken to alleviate some of the flooding, this may allow for less of an effect in the upcoming years. One major educational gap that needs to be filled is if technologies are going to be put in place to allow for earlier warning signs, the people of the communities must be able to understand what are the signs and when to run for higher ground. There needs to be an effort made to encourage people about moving out from these low-lying areas to higher ground so that the evacuation and loss of homes and farms may not be so big. If the people are better educated on the precautions needed to be taken to alleviate some of the effects that the flood causes, this may allow for over time less lives to be taken and less people to be displaced. Without the help of outside nonprofits educating the Nigerians, steps taken to improve infrastructure and warning systems will not be able to be fully benefited.
The importance of mobile technology and social media platforms in 21st century disaster situations cannot be understated. The mobile phone infrastructure is crucial to communication in Nigeria and for most of the African continent. A 2011 study by the World Bank found that there were 648.4 million mobile phone subscriptions in Africa, and according to a 2012 analysis by the Nigerian Communications Commission, there are 101.3 million mobile phone subscriptions in Nigeria alone, putting Nigeria at the 11th in a list of most mobile phone subscriptions in the world by country. Mobile phones are so crucial because of the lack of landlines and infrastructure across the nation. Mobile phones can be used with existing social media platforms to inform Nigerians before, during, and after disaster situations. Facebook and Twitter have been used in numerous disaster and conflict situations in recent history. Throughout the 2011 Egyptian Revolution, Facebook was used by protesters to organize demonstrations and find missing people during the conflict. During the recent London riots, Twitter was used to keep the population informed about dangerous areas and looters. After the riots, the platform was also used to organize cleanup efforts. During Hurricane Sandy, Facebook and Twitter were again used to inform people of breaking news, coordinate relief efforts, help families keep in touch, and share information about shelters, food, and other resources. Nigerians could use these existing platforms for disaster prevention, response, and recovery situations in the future. Facebook is primarily used for coordination and could thus be used to organize relief efforts among the population. Twitter is good for notifying the masses quickly and is SMS capable, which means that those without smartphones, computers, or internet connections can still use the service to alert people of danger.
Our approach to educating and communicating with Nigerians comes in a three-part solution. The challenge in relaying messages across different demographics of people comes from the disparity in income, low literacy levels, and segregation between rural and urbanized areas. In the outskirts, where there is little wireless infrastructure, there could be loudspeakers hanging from lampposts urging residents to move from low-lying areas to higher grounds. This can be placed in conjunction with sirens and radios broadcasting live updates about the floods. In urbanized areas where a greater number of people have access to mobile cellular technology, mobile phone companies can set up a flood watch system where a person may text in tips and other relevant information. They can then collect data analytics from text messages sent to assess the severity of the flood situation in each area and prioritize resources as well as forecast the outbreak of certain waterborne diseases and implement the right preventive measures. In smaller towns, a network of sensors and alarms can be set up to alert the local businesses and call centers, who may then disseminate the information to local village officials and other residential areas. While setting up the initial infrastructure for this technology can be expensive, it has a huge potential to save lives and reduce the cost of. Hotspots are localized areas with bottlenecks, constrictions, depressions along the road profile where floods occur due to intense storms. Meteorologists can identify these areas using GPS technology and topography. It is important to put these areas on a tracking list and monitor them constantly. For example, Singapore has a network of 93 sensors that provide data on water levels near major flooding areas. This helps to enhance forecasting abilities and response time. This technology can also be used in urban planning to determine the best location to set up critical amenities such as displacement shelters, hospitals, and police stations. Better building regulations, drainage systems, reservoirs to hold water, and special installments of flood preventive measures in important buildings can also be mapped out using this technology. All in all, these solutions are aimed to mitigate and respond to the severity of the Nigerian floods and prevent them from escalating.
Following disaster, two main resources need to be available to the public: temporary shelter with accessible food and water, and hospitals and other public buildings that help sustain life. Take the flooding in Nigeria. We saw 363 deaths directly linked to the flooding and over 387,000 internally displaced persons. So what do we do to minimize the deaths and improve the quality of life for people following a major disaster? The first and simpler part of the solution is an array of improvements to the IDP camps. Currently, there are no permanent IDP camps in Nigeria. This is really odd for a country that faces flooding on a yearly basis and has seen internal conflict causing displacement for many years now. Strategically placed permanent camps facilitated by either the national government or an international agency need to be built. The permanent structures should have the infrastructure to support proper waste management in order to reduce the spread of disease and provide at least a minimal sense of security for the inhabitants. Once those are in place, they need to be well supplied. International agencies not only have to secure a way around the corrupt local government of providing food and supplies for the camps, but also figure out a way of establishing a supply chain based on the need in the varying camps. With enough food and supplies, camp officials and external agencies need to focus on helping people restart. Many will not have homes to go back to, rather they will go wherever there is work. Without many personal possessions, the availability of microloans meant for travel and food will be the key to helping people become self-sufficient again. The second part of the solution is much more long-term. It deals with the placement of and staffing of hospitals and other public buildings like schools. Much of the buildings in Nigeria are not only built without quality standards, but are also placed without any regard to the topography of the region. So, following disaster, not only homes are destroyed, but also hospitals and schools. People who are injured have nowhere to go, and doctors have no access to supplies. The Nigerian government, which already has topographical maps of the region, has to empower people with the knowledge of which places are safe to build on and which are prone to disaster. Without that knowledge, casualties won't be minimized, and the rebuilding and relocation process of people will go on without end from year to year.
In conclusion, Nigeria requires basic infrastructure, support from the government, and strong partnership with non-profit organizations in order to implement a long-term technical solution to alleviate future flooding.